Good afternoon. I'm Sherry Christenberry, your lay leader for today, and this is the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lower Bucks. Please remember to have a candle handy for the end of the service. So welcome. Welcome to this congregation and our Christmas Eve service. We're glad you've joined us in our sacred cyberspace and hope you will experience love, acceptance, and inspiration. As some of our family return home for the holidays, we gather to celebrate a special Christmas Eve service. An inspiring feeling of peace will blanket us as we listen to Christmas stories and sing our favorite Christmas hymns. We have an interesting new prelude this morning, excuse me, from our UU music makers.
Stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till He appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, oh hear the angel voices. Oh, night divine, oh, night when Christ was born. Oh, night divine, oh, night divine. Truly He taught us to love one another. His law is love, and His gospel is peace. Chains shall He break, for the slave is our brother, and in His name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy
Thank you, Avi, Jim, Aaron, and Jeff. Thank you so much. Please join me as we light the chalice. Out of the darkness, light. Out of the light, warmth. Out of the warmth, joy. Out of the joy, togetherness. May this flame hold us for the time we are here with one another. Our opening words today, Into the Bright Circle, are by the Reverend Alfred Cole. Into the bright circle of light and life, which is the Christmas season we have come. Out of the routine ways of living and the drab little ruts of habit, we have come to warm our hearts and minds at the cradle of the child. May something of the beauty, mystery, and promise of this lovely old story fall like silver rain upon the broken dreams, the hates and fears of all. Once again, as we pause, we look up, and in the far-off distances, we hear that old music of hope, brotherhood, sisterhood, and blessed peace. And now we're really excited to have Avi with us live today. And we're going to start by singing Deck the Halls.
Merry Christmas, happy holiday, everyone. It is wonderful. Even as we stay muted, as a community, let's sing together wherever you are. Join in with me. Deck the halls with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la. 'Tis the season to be jolly, fa la 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 la. Don we now our gay apparel, fa la 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 la. Troll the ancient Yuletide carol, fa la 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 la. See the blazing Yule before us, fa la 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 la. Strike the harp and join the chorus, fa la 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 la. Follow me in merry measure, fa la 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 la. While I tell of Yuletide treasure, fa la 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 la. Fast away the old year passes, fa la 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 la. Hail the new ye lads and lasses, fa la 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 la. Sing we joyous all together, fa la 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 la. Heedless of the wind and weather, fa la 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 la.
Thank you, Avi. That really gets me in the spirit. I hope it gets everybody else in the spirit too. We have a great Christmas message for all ages from Beck Stow.
Merry Christmas, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Bex Stow, and our message for all ages on this Christmas Eve is 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, also known as A Visit from St. Nicholas by Clement C. Moore. This version is illustrated by Jesse Wilcox Smith. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wandering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they met with an obstacle mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk. And laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. And I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
Thank you, Bex. We have a call to worship tonight by Alex Klingenberg, "In Whom Will We Be Reborn?" We come together tonight to remember the history or the myth that says hope was born in the form of a baby named Jesus. What is so compelling about the story of Jesus' birth, his life, his love? Why has this story reached across the ages to us while so many others have faded into history? Jesus embodies the best of what humanity can be: compassionate, humble, brave, and mortal. Jesus asks us to make the most of our life, to create joy where there is pain, to care for the poor and question the powerful, and perhaps most importantly, to question the purpose of our own lives. What will we leave in our wake? In whom will we be reborn? What light can we bring in the darkness? Tonight, on the eve of Christmas, we contemplate the significance that one person can have, and we revel in the joy of possibilities. Avi's going to lead us now in It Came Upon a Midnight Clear.
It came upon a midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. Peace on the earth to all goodwill, from heaven the news we bring. The world in solemn stillness lay to hear the angels sing. Still through the cloven skies they come, with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the weary world. Above its sad and lonely plains they bend on hovering wings, and ever over its babel sounds the blessed angels sing. But with the woe have rolled 2,000 years of wrong. And we who fight the wars hear not the love song which they bring. Oh, hush the noise of battle strife, and hear the angels sing. For lo, the days are hastening on, by prophet bards foretold, when with the ever-circling years come round the age of gold, when peace shall over all the earth its ancient splendors fling, and the whole world give back the song which now the angels sing.
Thank you, Avi. And thank you, everybody that sang along. Tonight we feature the Reverend Dr. Craig Rubano. Reverend Craig, as you will remember, is the minister of the UU congregation of Monmouth County in Lincroft, New Jersey. And he's been guest ministering with us since 2011 while he pursued his degrees. He was ordained to the ministry in 2018 by the UU congregation of Princeton. Craig is a graduate of Yale College and Columbia University, and he lives at the summit of 10 Mile Run Mountain, just north of Princeton, where he has helped to raise 2 nieces and 2 Nigerian dwarf goats. Here is his first reading for us tonight.
A reading of the first Christmas story, Matthew 1:18 through 25. Now the manner of the birth of Jesus, the Anointed, was this. His mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, but before they had been joined, she was discovered to be pregnant from a Holy Spirit. And her husband, Joseph, being an upright man, and not wishing to make a spectacle of her, resolved to divorce her in private. But look, as he was pondering these matters, the Lord's angel appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not fear to receive your wife Mary, for what has been begotten within her is from a Spirit, the Holy One. And she will bear a son, and you shall declare his name to be Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. All of this occurred in order that there might be fulfilled what the Lord spoke through the prophet, saying, See, the virgin shall conceive in her womb, and shall bear a son, and they shall declare his name to be Emmanuel, which, being interpreted, means God with us. And Joseph, having arisen from sleep, did as the Lord's angel had bidden him, and received his wife. But he had no intimacy with her until she bore a son, and he declared his name to be Jesus.
Thank you, Reverend Craig. And please join Avi in singing Joy to the World. Oops.
Joy to the word is come. Let earth with praises ring. Let every heart prepare a room. And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. Joy to the earth, now gladness reigns. Let hearts their song employ, while fields and floods, rock hills and plains, repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy. No more let sins and sorrows grow, nor thorns infest the ground. Let righteousness its glory show, as far as love is found, as far as love is found, as far as love is found.
Fantastic. Thank you. Reverend Craig starts the second of his stories.
A reading of the second Christmas story, Part 1, Luke 2, 1 through 7. Now it happened that in those days an edict went out from Caesar Augustus that all the inhabited world should be enrolled in a census. This, the first enrollment, took place when Quirinius was governing Syria. And all went to be enrolled, each to their own city. And so Joseph went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, since he was from the house and lineage of David, to be enrolled with Mary, who was betrothed to him and who was pregnant. And while they were there, it came about that the days of her bearing reached their term, and she gave birth to her son, her firstborn. And she wrapped him in swaddling cloths and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the lodge.
This is live.
Thank you, Reverend Craig. And Avi, please help us with the first Noel.
The first Noel, the angel did say, was to certain poor shepherds in fields as they lay, in fields where they lay keeping their sheep, on a cold winter's night was ever so deep. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. They looked up and saw a star shining in the east beyond them far, and to the earth it gave a great light, and so it continued both day and night. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. And by the light of that same star, three magi came from country far. To seek a king was their intent, and to follow the star wherever it went. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel.
Great. Love it. Reverend Dr. Craig will continue with his story.
The conclusion of the second Christmas story, Luke 2, 8 through 14. And there were shepherds in the countryside there, dwelling out in the fields and keeping guard in the night over their flock. And an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were afraid, greatly afraid. And the angel said to them, "Do not fear, for see, I bring to you good tidings of a great joy, which will be for all the people. Because today, in David's city, a Savior was born to you, who is the anointed Lord. And this is a sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped in swaddling cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly there appeared with the angel a throng of the heavenly army, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest places, and peace on earth among all of goodwill."
Thank you, Reverend Craig. And now one of my favorite hymns, Angels We Have Heard on High.
Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Shepherds, why this jubilee? Why these songs of happy cheer? What great brightness do you see? What glad tidings do you hear? Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo. See him in a manger laid, whom the angels praise above. Mary, Joseph, lend your aid, while we raise our hearts in love. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo.
Thank you, Avi. It is just so wonderful to have you live with us in person today. Thank you. Reverend Dr. Craig Rubano will give us a wonderful sermon.
When I was a very small child, my St. Louis Christmas story would begin on the eve, spent with my mother's side of the family, then centering on the morning of with the opening of presents, a church service, and time spent with my father's side of the family at my aunt and uncle's. When my family moved to South America, no longer near extended family and now poised at the beginning of summertime, my Christmas story changed a lot, involving friends and their families, swimming pools, and barbecues. Later, we reverted to the St. Louis version of Christmas, with hectic travel plans thrown in the mix, and with my theater career schedule on at least one occasion moving Christmas to February. The birth of my nieces shifted my Christmas story to Princeton, where it has stayed ever since, especially since both my parents and I moved there to eliminate the hectic travel portion of the deal. So my Christmas story existed in multiple versions. Family, winter, summer, friends, travel madness over varied distances, temporal shifts in observance, walking distance family gatherings. And now with my becoming a minister and my nieces in college, preparations for services, and again, observance shifting to the spaces and times available to my family's collective schedules. Multiple Christmas stories with different contours, and that's just me. Was any one of them the real one? One more authentic than another? Think back on your own lives. I would imagine there is no one definitive Christmas story in your histories, but various versions, each with different characters, place settings, and evolving traditions. Perhaps tonight is the first time you have ever been at a Christmas Eve service, and you're wondering if you are welcome to enjoy the evening as much as those who have lived it out so many times before. The answer, by the way, is yes, you are. At the heart of all of our Christmas stories, hopefully, is some joy, some hope, some love, likely a child or two, amid whatever any particular year brings in the manner of uncertainty, sadness, fear, and dysfunction. Christmas stories have always been like that. At least once a couple versions of it were written up, each in its own context for a particular audience, for its author's specific goals, with different characters, themes, and settings, circling around a child, some joy, some hope, amid fear, political oppression, and uncertainty. It should be said, however, that for many years following the birth of the one we call Jesus, there was no Christmas story at all. In fact, for 2 generations, not mentioned in a single one of the Apostle Paul's letter to any population, or later after the destruction of the Jerusalem temple and the forcible removal of much of the population in diaspora, not even with the first gospel accounts, including the books of Mark and John, still included in the canonical Bible, no Christmas story was told or known. The first story of Christmas emerged nearly a century following the birth of the child Jesus, written to a largely Jewish Christian audience in what we now call the book of Matthew. And we heard it in its entirety in the first reading this evening. The child was born, and Joseph and Mary called him Jesus. Period. The only reason it's even mentioned is Matthew's intention of situating Jesus as a new Moses. The birth, a narrative set up for a longer tale of Magians, migration, murder, and mayhem that transpired in the tale itself at least a year after the birth. But we'll get to that story at the other end of Christmas's 12 days. And again, after Matthew, for a decade or two, no other story of Christmas was told. The census, the trip from Nazareth to Bethlehem, the makeshift setting of an animal shelter, the shepherds, the angels, those all appear in the only other account in a gospel among the dozens of gospels proliferating at the time that include any Christmas story. The Luke account appeared at least 110 years after the birth of Jesus, 4 or 5 generations removed from the event itself. Luke is written to a largely Gentile, Greco-Roman audience with a more universal message and an emphasis on the poor, the oppressed, the lowly. Both stories written by people unknown to history, certainly their names were not Matthew and Luke, persons not native to Palestine, delivered in a language Jesus would not have spoken, and differing in basic details, where, when, and how, where the family lived. In Matthew, Jesus' family resides in Bethlehem. In Luke, they live in Nazareth, required to travel to Bethlehem for a special census. When the birth occurred, in Matthew, Jesus is born during the reign of King Herod, who died in the year 4 before the Common Era. Luke places it during the Quirinian census, held in 6 or 7 of the Common Era. The how of the matter, Matthew just has the child born at home. Luke increases the drama, having Jesus born in a feeding trough at an animal shelter, likely a cave. That the two stories are ahistorical and mutually irreconcilable used to bother me, as if the distance from the events they describe or the discrepancies in the accounts somehow disqualified both. I have a sense suspicion or even resentment may affect many of us still. We may well feel that we've been fed impossible tales. Perhaps we're smarting over being dearly attached to accounts so demonstrably implausible. For many Unitarian Universalists especially, Christmas may be tinged with the past pain of threateningly imposed allegiances to a faith that seemed to be dependent on the historical accuracy of biblical details. The defensive anxiety of would-be apologists still runs high, alive and well in American culture. All you have to do is turn on the History Channel this time of year to find the spectacle of people who play scholars on TV arguing for the Bethlehem setting of the story, although there is no evidence the area was even inhabited at the time, or trying to wrench Roman history around so that something like a Lucan census would have happened around the time of Matthew's Herodian timed birth. Yet the factual veracity of those details has nothing to do with what the gospel writers themselves were trying to accomplish. The gospels aren't depicting events whose contours need to correspond to post-Enlightenment standards of historical accuracy. The truth of the biblical accounts of Christmas has nothing to do with reproducibility in a laboratory or capturability on video. The two stories of Jesus' birth are inspirational tales, introductions to their respective gospels, cues for what to have present in the mind as their narratives unfold, reminders of important guiding principles for the audiences to whom the gospels were written. What the two gospels do have in common is the why. They're about the baby and therefore about the large-scale emotions we all experience when in the presence of newborn children. Because the Gospels want to elicit the widest breadth of our passions in order to harness them toward action in the world. High-stake actions with life-abundant consequences for people well beyond our immediate families, indeed, for humankind. Matthew's Gospel is the breathtaking tale of a Judaism spreading outside the channels of its prior influence, daring both to strike out against an oppressive Roman tyranny and to embrace the formerly unclean others of the surrounding nations. Matthew aims high. Luke's Gospel brings the story of Jesus down to the very ground upon which people suffered and struggled, written with an expansive social conscience, embracing downtrodden people reduced to nomadic existences, exiled from their temple, their homes. King Herod getting involved with a child held to be a king by Persian sages, a fight over who is Lord, the emperor or a peasant newborn? Impossible. An angelic chorus appearing to shepherds, lowliest of the low, homeless but for stony outcrops and scrappy olive groves, ludicrous, unthinkable. And in both cases, precisely the point. The collective story of Christmas is meant to revive the dispirited, meant to incite and support the passions of those dedicated to overthrowing the oppressive mantle of empire, meant to advocate for social justice, for the care of the poor, the neglected, the infirm. Say what you like. The Christmas stories are daring tales. And that's true for our own stories of Christmas, isn't it? Is there not a kernel of daring and magic around which our holiday celebrations have swirled? For me, there are multiple babies in the equation, for during another period of history, a firstborn girl was born in a snowstorm in St. Louis, nearly in the car attempting to deliver her mother to the hospital. But for that high drama, I would have no reason to celebrate Christmas at all, for I would not be. That's why I consider the biggest blessing that I have my mother with me still, along with my father, sister, brother-in-law, and two rather amazing nieces. My stories of Christmas are of perseverance, migration, time's passage, changes of ancillary characters and settings, all wrapped up in the love of a woman who, while fully terrestrial, has her angelic moments. Perhaps for many, the through line of Christmas isn't a pretty one, but rather a historical sequence of hurts, losses, and grievances. I suspect, however, that if you are here tonight or watching this online, your stories of Christmas are beloved or cherished by those whom you love. We feel the emotional pull that Christmas has to resurrect treasured memories of our childhoods and of loved ones no longer with us, even when, yes, during this season, recollections of magical mornings under the tree often compete with decidedly less than magical scenes of family dysfunction. Yet in reliving the past, we are reminded that each of us, too, was a baby once. That we each have beloved Christmas stories. None is more true than another. Together, they represent the human condition, and they all matter. Our multiple stories of Christmas are vibrant representation of the inherent worth and dignity that we Unitarian Universalists put front and center in our faith commitments. It is only when the Christmas stories of the least of these, like a child born on livestock food in a cave, whosoever stories are on the margins of representation or existence, it is only when they are accorded dignity that any of us can hear the singing of the angels. It is only when a room for all of our stories is prepared that we can repeat the sounding joy that is each of our birthrights. And it is only a night when we can see our inherent sacred connection with the Christmas stories of others, to behold humanity in the eyes of one another, that is truly a holy night. May it continue to be so. In 1855, John Sullivan Dwight, creator of the field of music journalism, ardent abolitionist and Unitarian minister, penned English words to a French Christmas song that had been banned in French Catholic churches for what was deemed socialist poetry and for music written by a Jew. Dwight's lyrics have become among the dearest in the repertoire, for they remind us that the declaration of the Christmas stories, though challenging, are filled with the thrill of hope. It is the Christmas stories' conviction that our lives, our very souls, have worth, that they matter only when the good news of peace is felt in the hearts of all. I'm joined by Louise Chernosky at the piano in a gift from me to you, UUFLB, this Christmas Eve.
So Reverend Dr. Craig Rubano has a wonderful rendition of O Holy Night for us. But before we get to that, let's just pause for a little meditation. And this is provided to us by Reverend Christine Robinson. So just take a second, calm yourself. Let us join our hearts and minds together in the spirit of meditation and prayer. May these moments of quiet lead us to the heart of the season, which is peace. May we breathe deeply of peace in this quiet place. Relax into its warmth. Know we are safe here. And let us open our hearts to the evening's story. Like the wandering couple, may we find that our greatest trials issue forth from our greatest joys. Like the harried innkeeper, may we find ways to be of help to others. Like the lumbering beasts, may we be silent witnesses to the unfathomable glory of life. Like the shepherds on the hill, may we know that we need never be afraid. Like the journeying wise, may we always have the courage to follow our stars. Like the angels, may we cry peace to a troubled world. Holy One, to these prayers for our own transformation, we add our prayers for all of those who suffer and grieve this evening. May they find comfort. And we add our prayers for all those involved in war. May they be safe. And may this season of peace and goodwill nudge our world towards its ideals, for then will Christmas truly dawn. So now, let's listen to the voice of Reverend Craig.
O
stars are brightly shining. It is the night of the dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, oh, night divine, oh, night when Christ was born, oh, night divine, oh, night divine. Truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love, and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Rise from our knees and hear the people's voices, oh, night divine, oh, night, let peace be born, oh, night divine, oh, night, let peace be born.
We are so blessed to have so many wonderful musicians amongst us. For our closing words are from Reverend Tess Baumberger. The holiday season is upon us, but this year many of us move toward it with laden feet. It has been such a year, and because it has been such a year, it may feel forced to enter into the jolly spirit of Christmas, the joyful spirit of Hanukkah, the reflective spirit of solstice, the hopeful spirit of New Year's. Thinking of all of this, Reverend Tess offers this responsive prayer. So please respond with the words, "May we find peace." Spirit of life and goodness,
May we find peace.
when our world is worn with war,
May we find peace.
when our lives are ruled by fear,
May we find peace.
when loss-laden our days,
May we find peace.
when loneliness weighs heavy in our hearts,
May we find peace.
when despair takes hold of our souls,
May we find peace.
as we give help to those in need,
May we find peace.
as we go about our daily duties,
May we find peace.
as we make holiday preparations.
May we find peace.
It is time, if you remember all of our Christmas Eve services, to light your candle. I will use the chalice to light mine, and Gil and Scott will join me on this side of the camera. The UU Music Makers have created a wonderful rendition of Silent Night. Thank you to all our music makers, Avi, Jeff, Jim, Avery, Joanna, Aaron, Braden. Thank you so much. Please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We have basked in the warmth and beauty of this flame in this community. There are miles behind you and many more ahead. As you journey on toward wholeness, may all that is good and true guide your way. May the joy of love lighten every step, and the miracle that is life be ever present in your sight. Our Christmas Eve service is concluded. If you can, go to gallery view, and we can maybe see everybody that has a candle lit, and if you don't, that's fine too. You should be able to unmute now and join the party.
Right.